A few years ago, a fire started in one of the world's most famous cathedrals. The news and grieving comments spread like wildfire across the world, and soon people in countries from all different nations had personal condolences and French flags covering their social media feeds. Billions were donated to restore the historic building, and for several weeks, all you heard was about the tragic event. However, a well-known controversial Swedish profile wanted to stir the pot a bit, and therefore shared a story on his Instagram with a picture of the burning cathedral and a text saying finally, "Oh, the hatred he received." People were outraged over how someone could be so heartless as to even say something so horrible when something so terrible had happened. In the late 1990s, one of the biggest rock musicians at the time toured the world to promote his new album. Part of his act during the concert included tearing out pages from one of the most sacred and revered books of all time. This of course created outrage in many countries worldwide, with some even banning the artist and his band from playing, or even entering certain countries. About 2 months ago, a well-known stone monument was destroyed on the continent beyond the Great Sea. A monument that many believe has satanic origins and was placed there by the dark world elite who, among other things, carved into the large stone tablets that humanity should live in harmony with animals and nature on this earth. To maintain balance, a population should not exceed 500 million people. When the stones were destroyed, people in communities all over the world who say that the fight for truth and freedom cheered and applauded, saying that now, it's finally happening, the light has finally won. Whether it's the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris burning down, Marilyn Manson tearing up a Bible on stage, or the Georgia Guidestones in the US being bombed, these are still only material things that should have no value whatsoever to you personally. People place far too much value in physical things outside of themselves, because in one of each of these three events, none of them really mean anything to you here and now in your immediate everyday life. To just share on social media for the sake of sharing, or get happy, sad, angry or upset, or cheer whether something did or did not happen, only shows what a controlled muppet you are. Regardless on which side you claim to be standing on. Because there are no sides or winners here. They say jump, and you jump. They say this, you say that. But nothing changes in your everyday life here and now. Everything stays the same. However, not many people agree with me on this. Georgia Guidestones, for example, many strongly believe that this was a sign of victory, that the light overcame the dark, and that change is going to come, that we should toast, celebrate and cheer. It was the forces of light, and it must be true because there are extremely important people in spiritual communities who sensed that it was a victory. They felt it in their heart, and then it is true. Imagine being so important to be able to sense when some stones on the other side of the Atlantic are brought to the ground, whether there are evil or good forces behind it, or that this was done for a special purpose, a higher purpose. Yes, if you are that important, then you should reasonably be given more space than just the Facebook feed, to be able to predict and comment on various global events. But hey, what do I know? Instead, perhaps we should focus on why things happen. Is it really happening because of something bigger, or is it actually just happening? Or does it happen precisely for the reason that we have to direct our eyes there, in order to turn our eyes away from something else? If the elites are so smart and the light so bright, many events feel a little too good to be true, right? Regardless of what is what, the important thing is not what is happening physically out there, somewhere far away. What matters is what happens inside you. Your personal development. Here and now in your everyday life. In your direct reality. We are far too easily distracted and stumble in the dark as soon as something somewhere glimmers a little extra. We listen to every voice out there except our own inner voice, and it confuses us and means we'll probably be stumbling in the dark for quite some time. As usual in the self-proclaimed awakened population around the world, this particular thing about the Georgia Guidestones was something that could not be questioned. Personally, I expressed that perhaps one should think before one begin to cheer, and actually break down what it actually says in the messages the stones had engraved. For example, it said that humanity should be kept below 500 million in population in order to live in harmony with everything else on Earth. Which to me still sounds pretty good, and yes, I think the world needs some cleaning up. It's crazy out there and has been for some time now. Surely anyone would agree with that? There are far too many of us and we behave like termites eating everything in our path, precisely because man is a selfish creature. But I was not allowed to express this on social media, think so, because the lightworkers considered that I could then indeed begin this reduction, by removing myself from the surface of the earth. Then, I wasn't allowed to play anymore. Blocked by saying something that was not in alignment with what the love and light people consider to be right. You hear where I'm getting at, don't you? Regardless of whether what happened to Georgia Guidestones happened for a reason, or whether the bombing had a deeper meaning behind it or not, would it have been better to preserve them just like other historical monuments, to take part of in the future? Using the past, we can act in the present to create the future. On the other hand, if you remove a piece of the puzzle, the bigger picture is incomplete. After all, just look at every bit of almost all historical monuments across the world that the system today hides large parts of, and distorts history to confuse us. No one really knows what is true, false, or just made up. Monuments like the Georgia Guidestones will surely in the near future fall into oblivion, and the sleeping flock of sheep will roll their eyes at those who say that the elite want to eliminate large parts of humanity to bring the population down to 500 hats and conspiracy theorists. With the stones and its engravings gone, no one will believe what was engraved on them, and considering how censorship on the internet looks like today, how difficult will it not be to wash out old facts in a few years? Things are now shifting fast, and the love and light mob is becoming increasingly aggressive. It's their way or the highway, and dissent is censored and blocked, just like in the mainstream mob, and dialogue and discussion are rarely welcomed. But like I said, physical things shouldn't take the focus away from what's really important. Notre Dame was a symbol to some, but just a cathedral to others, just as the Bible to Marilyn Manson was just a few sheets of paper, but sacred to others. The Georgia Guidestones might have been just an art project to some, while others see it as a monument with a hidden message. Because what is true for you may not be true for anyone else. And before you celebrate events that happen today according to an agenda you believe to be true, first think through what impact it may have for tomorrow, and the truths that once were false will be considered true then.